Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's stream. My name is Paul. I'll be your host for tonight. Sorry for the motorbike noises outside. One of the challenges of living on a main road. Yes, thank you all for coming tonight for what is sure to be a very interesting talk. Before we get started, I did just want to set some ground rules for tonight. First of all, we are going to have the talk from Tim. At the end of that, we will wait for some questions. We'll have about 15 minutes of question time. Then after the question and answer session, we'll all be heading over to the Games with Wings Discord for a little bit more of any questions anyone might have. We'll be over there until 8 o'clock tonight. And I will be dropping a link for that into the chat for everyone. If you enjoyed tonight's talk, please do consider subscribing. You'll be able to see any talks that we have coming up, and also any of our past talks are also there on the Wargaming Sydney YouTube channel. And yes, that is it for me. I'm going to very quickly hand you over to Tim and get on with tonight's proceedings, because it is what we are all here for. Okay, over to you.
Thanks, Paul. Good day, everyone. My name is Tim Gurto. I'm a senior software engineer at Wargaming Sydney. So Wargaming Sydney is a studio of about 110 people. Wargaming itself is a much larger international company, best known for World of Tanks and World of Warships. At the Sydney studio, we provide some support for existing games in production like World of Tanks. We make back-end and tech features for games, and we also prototype and develop new games here. I've been at Wargaming for nearly 6 years and worked on a wide variety of projects, technical back-end stuff, rapid game prototyping, paper prototyping, working on new games from scratch, as well as building on top of existing games. And I also make games at home as a hobby. And tonight I'll use examples from a number of these projects. So complex game features with many moving parts. It's often assumed that the only way to build those is to get the entire feature finished before delivering it to managers or before doing significant playtesting. This approach, unfortunately, has some pretty significant drawbacks. It limits how much you can test how the feature feels. It means you can only really do that at the end, which means you don't have the confidence that you're creating the player experience that you want, or that the feature actually works in the way you expect. It's expensive to change direction, meaning if you've built the whole thing and you then afterwards decide something's not quite right, or there's some new direction you could take it, you're going to waste a lot of work. You're going to throw away a lot of work that's gone into that. It's easy to miss details that couldn't be anticipated during the planning phase. So if you try to plan the whole thing out and do it in one go, there are going to be bits you'll miss when you eventually do test it, especially test it in a wider context of the game or with other features. You're going to find details, more work that you need to do, and it's again more expensive to do this later rather than earlier. You get limited feedback. If you only get feedback from players or from your own internal playtesting at the end of feature development, it really limits your ability to adapt and to be confident again that the feature is doing what you expect it to do. Bad interactions with other features, with limited testing, meaning you don't get to test all those corner cases with how features interact with each other. So often in a game, you'll have a number of fairly complex features that stand alone a little bit, but also have to interact with each other. And it takes a lot to test all of those. And finally, unpredictable schedule. With a very large piece of work, it's very difficult to schedule that effectively. There's a reason why in Scrum generally things are estimated using Fibonacci numbers, because the larger something is, the more vague you have to be, because you can't be accurate at larger sizes. So the other side of that coin is splitting something into very small slices comes with a lot of benefits. Most of this list comes from a blog post at Adobe, simply because it's one of the best descriptions of this I could find. So if this slide is not sufficiently compelling for you, feel free to go check out that blog post. So breaking something into small slices makes it easy to understand. A very small piece of work, it's easy to grok. It's easy for a development team to discuss and agree what it is, what its scope is, what its purpose is, meaning you get consensus among the team. There's less ambiguity about what the work actually is. More accurate estimates, as I mentioned before. Smaller pieces of work, it's much easier to estimate them, to comprehend what the areas of technical complexity are, the risks involved. Easier to pick out the valuable bits. So if you break something into a lot of small parts, not all those parts are going to be equal. Some are going to deliver a lot more of the punch than others, and it's great to be able to work on those first, and some of the other ones maybe even completely exclude. A faster feedback loop. Something very small means you can build it and test it and adapt very quickly. Specialized roles like testers. If you've got small pieces of work, they don't sit idle waiting for the whole feature to be done before they can apply their craft. Instead, they can hit the ground running and help the feature right out of the gate. And finally, the work is more engaging and satisfying. Psychologically, making small daily progress, having small wins, being able to at the end of the day feel like you've finished something and accomplished something is very good for your engagement, and happy developers generally work better. In addition to that list, I've also found that small slices of work fit in well with test-driven development, which makes it very easy to get high test coverage, which in turn means the features are more robust. Interaction between features is more robust, and you can also add and change features more confidently because you know that if you break something, you'll find out very quickly and be able to fix it. And with small pieces of work, it's very easy to change direction. If you get to a point and decide that you want to add something or remove something, or the feature is not exactly what you expected, or you find some other opportunity, you can turn on a dime, pursue that new direction without throwing away a lot of unfinished work. So that all sounds nice in theory, but how do we actually do it? So I've identified 4 key approaches to splitting work up. First, instead of focusing on delivering the whole thing, think about what's valuable to you as a developer. Second, be a minimalist. Be comfortable with doing less, much less. Third, start in the middle. Focus on the guts of the feature and not the boring boilerplate work. And 4, get feedback and iterate. Test often, see what works, see what doesn't, and be open to changing direction based on that testing. I'll go into detail on all these with plenty of examples, and a lot of them overlap with each other too. Note that for most of these, you'll need to put on a game designer hat. You can't just be a mindless developer, because applying these requires you to think critically about the design of the game. And also, splitting work up is a skill which will get better with practice. So don't despair if you find it hard initially. It's hard for everyone initially. So first, consider value to you, the developer. In Scrum, we work in 2-week sprints, and we deliver product iterations, which represent value to customers or stakeholders, or on a game project to players. For our smaller slices we're trying here, instead try to think of yourself as a customer. You as a developer, you have a higher tolerance for rough or unfinished work, or even tiny slivers of a feature that wouldn't really be useful for just a playtester or a player to get in their hands. So you, unlike a player, can get value out of information, not just a playable feature. If you can try something that answers a question or identifies a risk or reveals a promising new direction, that's something that you can do with a much smaller piece of a feature than would be useful to put in front of a player. You as a developer know what's easy or hard to do, which makes it easier to choose what is a small slice. You can do crude and quick playtesting. You don't need to worry about, if it's just for you, you don't need to worry about packaging, deployment, arranging the playtest, getting playtesters, surveying, getting feedback. You can just do it yourself in a few minutes. You can play with the thing and see how it feels. This is an unintuitive way of thinking about delivery. So to help, try asking these questions. How might the feature fail? what about it are you unsure about? Which areas do you see as risky? And technically, what technical risks exist? These are things. Your answers to these questions could give you hints about something that you would find value in trying that wouldn't make sense to put in front of a player, but you yourself could find value. So, for example, at Wargaming, we make tank games. So a few years ago, we were working on a tank game. The feature we were working on was death. When you shoot someone, they die. So the first thing we did was just a dead state. So put players in a state where they can't move or shoot. That gave us a bit of the technical plumbing of what the dead state is. It also let us feel what death feels like, what it feels like to be in this game, but without the ability to move or shoot. And then the next step we went on to was actually putting a player into that state when you shoot him. So more of the technical plumbing, but also letting us feel what it's like to kill someone. So you actually get to shoot someone and kill him and see what that feels like. So even in these tiny 2 steps that were actually fairly quick to write, we could feel a lot of the value we were trying to get out of this feature. We could see what it feels like, and we got a lot of the technical work done. So these small slices were valuable to us as the developers. After that, having a dead player see that he's dead, so that reduces the dissonance between not being able to move and shoot and seeing a perfectly alive tank in the middle of your screen. So that helped with the experience a bit. Then making sure that you can see other players' corpses, so you actually get to see what it's like to play the map with corpses in it. And then a visual effect when you die, so a little explosion effect. So more feedback for the player, less surprise, again, improving the user experience. And then step 6 there, requiring multiple shots to kill someone. So it wasn't until here that we actually implemented a health system. Up until here, we didn't need one because it was just 1 shot, 1 kill. So not only did this give us the technical work for putting a health system in, but as playtesters, we could then start feeling out the balance of combat. Instead of just 1 shot kill, it takes a number of shots. You can feel, okay, do you feel powerful enough with how many shots it takes to kill someone? And then more steps, seeing your health, seeing other people's health. The original feature spec we got from the product manager included all of that and a lot more, but we were able to develop it within these small steps for our own internal purposes before delivering the feature to the product manager. And each of these steps gave us, the developers, value. Second approach, be a minimalist. The Agile manifesto says simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done, is essential. Similarly, the Pareto principle states that roughly 80% of consequences come from 20% of the causes. So in a large game feature, there are still small core are quite small and can often be done quite quickly. So to try this, for now, ignore any assumptions you have about what must be done for a feature. Instead, think about what does the feature do that makes the game better? Which bit of it would be the most fun for you to play around with? And what is the most important moment for the user? By moment, I mean a very short moment, like a couple of seconds maybe. So answering these questions will help you to think about what small parts of the feature might be worth delivering first and getting a feel for. So for example, we'll go to a personal project of mine, Hellas, which is an MMORPG. It has spellcasting in it, so the ability to use like spells and abilities. If you've played any RPG, you kind of know what this is. And the original entry in my backlog just said implement the spells. And it was something I kept pushing off because it was this huge thing. So instead, I split it up into 92 small items, which even for me is excessive. But we've got 92 small items here. In this table, you can see the very top of that list, ordered by my estimate of return on investment. And so the first item is a fireball command that damages your target by a constant amount. So you put in a command and the guy takes some damage. Very simple, very small. It's obviously not a complete feature, but it's something that can be done quickly. And then if you look down the list, particles, sound effects, crit chance, more than one spell, that kind of thing. All of these items are very small and fairly simple to do, but each of them is independently valuable, and doing one and trying it out can give you value. So that first item, a fireball command that damages target by a constant, that's what I did first. You can see it on the right there. It's well, it could be animated. Basically, you type /F and the guy takes 10 damage. It took about 15 lines of code to write that. I did it in a few minutes. It didn't look great, but it let me feel the feature. Actually seeing the other character take damage, it's hard to describe it because it's not very visual, but I assume most people who've cast a spell in a game can kind of relate to the idea of the feeling of power you get when you can push a key on your keyboard and something happens. You see some kind of effect on the world, and that's what I felt when I made the other guy take damage. I saw his health bar go down, and it was great. So in addition to that, I could observe the network delay I was getting. I could feel the fun of long range damage compared with melee combat, which was already in the game. And I realized that sounds and particles were not blocked by projectiles, meaning I didn't have to put the projectiles into the game before I could move on to sounds and particles. What I had here was great. And there was so much of the core fun in just this tiny little moment that I then went on to enhance this moment. So the next step became explosion particles. Without this approach, if I was trying to do the whole thing at once, one of the next things I did would probably have been cast time. So a fireball takes, say, 1.5 seconds to cast. Instead, this was 3.5 years ago, and I still haven't done cast time. The game is in beta, very much so. So it's something that will eventually go in, I think. But the game's been fine without it, and it's already kind of balanced without that. So my assumptions about what would be critical to get in soon to make this a functional part of the game were wrong, and it was only through playtesting a tiny part of it that I was able to demonstrate that to myself. The third approach is to start in the middle. For a large system, try not to worry about the starting and stopping, the entering and exiting, or a lot of the flowery UX around a feature. The core experience of a feature comes from it itself. It's trying to do something to provide some value, not the boilerplate around it. So boilerplate meaning parts with no technical risk, no design insight, really no chance of being descoped. It's something that's definitely going to be in there. So the health system, a good example from the earlier killing tanks example. I knew there'd be a health system in there, but it was less important than the other stuff. Health bars are kind of more boilerplate than the core functionality. They're nice to see, they give you feedback, but there is a core feature there that is much more important. So to take this approach, pretend that all that boilerplate is done and ignore it for now. I'll give you a concrete example. One of the games that we worked on a couple of years ago, we wanted to introduce clans. It was an arena game. So a naive first step for adding this feature might be that a player can create a clan, a player can join a clan. But if we were to do that first, would that actually have let us experience the feature or given us any useful information that we could use to adapt it? Would it have brought us the value that we wanted from that feature? Obviously, there's no point in creating or joining a clan if you can't do anything in it. So think about how the feature will actually impact you. If a player were already in a clan, how would that impact him? Is it about community building? Then maybe we should work on the chat system first. Is it about sharing stats or items? Then maybe we should implement that first. Pure basic example, try it out, see if it works. Demonstrate to ourselves that the feature actually does what it's supposed to do, that the value we're trying to get out of it actually exists before we do all this other stuff that has to be done. But the feature could change. Like if we try this out and realize it's not going to work, there's some problem here, or it's not as fun as we thought it was, or it doesn't interact well with the other systems, we might want to change it. And taking this approach will give you opportunities to change the design and to adapt it to the problems you see. And so take those opportunities, and one of the benefits here is that you can change tack quickly without wasting too much work. A similar example from Hellas is instead of clans, my game has cities, which are multiplayer organizations, but you can share in-game objects, so permanent objects on the map. The first step I had to implementing this was to just create cities and automatically put users in them. So that's demonstrated to me through playtesting. There's no feedback in the game that you're in a city. I played the game, it felt exactly the same, because sure, I'm in a city, but what's that even mean? So the second step was to actually just put the name of your city under your name, so you could see that they exist. Playing the game, then you could actually feel like, oh, cities are a thing in this game. They don't do anything, but you felt that they were there, and it was very easy to do, which is why I did this one quite early. The next step was ownership of objects by cities. So this is part of the core value that cities give you, and doing this revealed quite a lot of technical challenges and risks, and also raised a lot of design questions that I had to answer. And it's much better to answer these earlier before I implement the entire feature than later. For example, until this point, objects could be owned only by an individual player. And so to make this work, I had to completely revamp how ownership worked in this game. And that led to a lot of questions about the way that interacted with other features. Do I want cities to interact with these features in that way? So it was great to be able to answer those questions early. And then after that, step 4, members of a city can use city-owned objects. So the city owns an object, but you don't feel that in the game until you can actually use your city's object, because otherwise it's just an object that you can't use. So step 4 there is about, again, it's something that you feel the feature through playtesting, and 3 and 4 together really gave the core value of the feature. And then after that, making objects persistent, which means if a server goes down and comes back up, the thing is still owned by the city. Critical, absolutely critical part of the feature, but it doesn't help to inform the feature. It's something that we're always going to get done. Nowhere on this list is creating a city, destroying a city, joining or leaving a city, or even building a city-owned object or giving an object to a city. All that stuff had to be done, but it's all cruft and could be pushed back to later. The fourth approach is to get feedback and iterate. Basically, get feedback as rapidly as you can. You yourself can run an informal playtest extremely quickly, just as a developer, in a few minutes. Go through, try it, get feedback, make a change. You should focus on getting anything visible or playable and touchable as quickly as possible, and then see it, play it, touch it. Fix any problems you find. Add any critical bits that feel like they're missing, and then test again. Without testing, you're not really going to understand these. You won't know these problems are here. You won't feel that the problems the bits are missing. It's only really through playtesting that anything can be fun. You can have a amazing game design unifying theory of everything, and have this great game figured out and implement it top to bottom, and it's not going to be fun. You can't know for sure until you play test it. And so playtesting as early as possible means that you can prove that it's fun or fix it if it isn't, and adapt. While you're prototyping, sacrifice code quality, sacrifice visual fidelity, sacrifice the user experience, unless those are the things you're actually testing. So in the earlier Fireball example, the particle effects are visual fidelity, but they are the bit that I was actually prototyping. They were what I consider to be the next most useful thing. What I mean by this here is, if we're implementing health bars, don't start by putting enormous resources into making them pretty, great UI around them, nice little visual effects when you lose health. Just get them in there, convey that information to the users, and then tie it and see what happens, see how it feels, and then you can decide what the next most useful thing is to do. So know what tiny piece you want to test, focus on implementing only that. Working in tiny steps like this and using feedback and adapting based on that feedback means that you can discover the fun of a game. Like again with the fireballs, I discovered that one little moment of losing health was actually so much of the value. And then that lets the feature grow organically in a direction that is actually fun for players. For a concrete example, a couple of years ago, we were trying to add landmines in World of Tanks as a feature. So the first couple of steps, when you push a key, a landmine drops behind your vehicle. We did that. We did playtesting on that. It was fine. Then when a vehicle drives over a mine, it blows up and does area damage. Okay, did that, playtested it with a couple of people. One person dropped a mine, another person drove on top of it. And then we realized only through playtesting that we needed a visual effect on your mines to make sure that they're kind of visible to you. So on the picture on the right there, you can see the little red lines around the particle effect. In the smaller picture there, you can see that the art asset we used was actually just a pillbox that was already in World of Tanks. We just shrunk it down and it looks enough like a landmine to do the job. Again, we didn't really care about art. We wanted to test the feature, the mechanics of the feature, the feel of the feature, instead of wasting effort, making a nice landmine asset that we may end up never even using. So after that, we did a visual effect when mines detonate, so an explosion effect. And that was quite simple because we were working on top of a World of Tanks, which is quite a significant, sophisticated code base, and a lot of things that we needed to do. It was quite easy to do them well and without bugs. And then number 4, limiting it, the ability to place mines based on some kind of cooldown or limit. So then we were actually able to do some real testing with it, and then someone decided, oh, it'd be really great if you could shoot a mine and blow it up, and that's something that we hadn't considered. It was not part of the original feature design, but we did it, and it was great. And then once we did that, the logical next thing that someone noticed was, well, if you've got a bunch of them in a row and one of them blows up, they should all blow up. And so we did that, and it was great. And the feature was a lot more fun than it would otherwise have been, because we were able to choose the direction we went based on early playtesting and adapt. And then after that, visual and audio effects when deploying a mine, which may naively have been done earlier, but by this time we actually had a much more fun feature. So in summary, breaking game features into small slices has many benefits. It's not as impossible as it may seem. My 4 approaches are: consider the value to you as a developer, be a minimalist, start in the middle, and get feedback and iterate. And this 4th one is the most important, and it kind of powers the others. The other 3 don't really work without the 4th one, without testing and feedback and iterating. And that is it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Tim. Okay, if anyone has any questions, you can pop them into the chat and I will be able to pass them on to Tim. And we do actually have a question to start, and it is about your Hellas project. Let me just find it. Brett Daniels asked, is Hellas built in a particular framework? Sounds interesting.
It's a 2D game. I've been working on it for 6 years, which makes it much less impressive. It's in C++ using SDL for graphics and controls and timing, but everything else I've done myself.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I hope that answers your question, Brett. One thing that I wanted to ask, when you were talking about the spell casting in Hellas, you mentioned, how you took the one item in your list, which was spell casting, quite simple, but broke that down then into, I think it was 92 items. How do you avoid, when you're breaking things down, I suppose, number one, how do you avoid it becoming too many items? And, how do you avoid it becoming, oh, I used to only have one item to do, now I've got 92. There's no way I'm going to do this. It's going to take too much time. How do you not intimidate yourself?
Well, my original motivation for splitting it was because that one item was way too intimidating. But basically you're right. It was too many, because probably a third of those items are still not done. and they're polluting my backlog. And my backlog is full of so many small items. I'm gonna basically redo it sometime soon, and start with some larger items again. It's good to break these things up right before you do them, and if you break everything up into small pieces, it's a lot of work, and there's going to be a lot of wasted effort because some things you're never going to get to. So splitting is great, but you should try to split just in time.
Thank you. I've got a question from a very familiar name. Anyone who attended our previous talk would recognize this name. It is from Bilal. What was your favorite feature to develop in Hellas, and on the contrary, what was the most painful?
My favorite feature was the original combat system. So every time I make a game with health in it, that one moment where you remove that health, where someone attacks someone and the health bar goes down, and there's the one little line in the code with a subtraction operation. That's always my favorite line of code in any game I make because it feels so impactful and it feels like, oh, it's actually doing something now. And so that's generally, I feel like that kind of is the linchpin, the center point of that project. And so that is very small, but that's my favorite feature. The scariest feature is the PvP feature because it's so under-tested. I'm concerned that people will just go around griefing each other and destroying objects, and there's no real recourse. And it needs to be tested, and I don't know the best way to do that because I'm a solo developer, so I can't really do heavy testing by myself. And there's the server's been up for about 3 years now, and people have got a lot of stuff they've been building, and someone could theoretically just go in there and ruin it for everyone. So it's kind of terrifying. I'm considering just descoping it for now and turning it off because it's just too risky.
That does sound pretty terrifying. So when you were talking about adding the mines into World of Tanks, you mentioned that because you broke the project down into all these small little component parts, that that seemed to spark other ideas with people about okay, we've added in this element that shows you where your mine is, and then people were suggesting ideas about, oh well, what if you could shoot a mine? Well, okay, if you can shoot a mine and we've got a bunch of them close together, should they blow each other up? Do you find that sort of organic iteration, does that happen naturally when you break it down into smaller elements rather than keeping it on the big, we're going to make mines scale?
Sometimes it's hard to know, which is why you need to do it. If you don't do it, you'll never know what you missed out on. And if we had just gone through our list of features, it may never have happened. We would have gotten to the end, delivered to the product manager, been told, okay, that's great, let's move on to the next thing, and it would never have been anywhere near as good as it could have been.
Yep. So it's sort of a value add on top of what was originally asked for.
Yes. So it gives you the opportunity to find those things if they're there.
Yeah.
It's hard to know in advance.
Excellent. And have you ever had a situation where you've taken something and broken it down into those smaller iteration points, and people just haven't been able to get it, like they, for whatever reason, the idea doesn't click with them, they're like, no, can we just do the whole thing, this little small thing's not working for me?
I have had a lot of pushback at the company when I've tried to break things into small items, mostly by product managers. The developers tolerate me. I think product managers think in large features and don't care about the small bits. Like, they're happy for us to do it as long as it gets done in whatever way we deem appropriate, but they don't care about the specifics. And if I go to a product manager and say, I want to split this into these, they don't care about all the little bits. They just want the feature. So we can do it this way, but we have to do it within the team and not distract the product manager with all the small details.
What they don't know won't hurt them.
It's not that they wouldn't want it if they knew. It's just that they don't want to know, basically.
Excellent. Okay, if there's any other questions, please remember to put them in the chat. We are on a little bit of a delay, so when you put your question into the chat, it's going to be sort of, maybe 20-30 seconds before we see that. So yep, please add those in. So I'll just go back to Hellas. So you're saying, so Hellas is live at the moment?
Yep. Yeah, it is. It's free to play. You can download the client and play.
Where would someone go to do that?
Playhellas.com.
Excellent URL. I love it. Okay, it looks like we don't have any other questions come through. So we might end the live stream now and head over to the Games with Wings Discord. I will put a link to that in the chat now. So if anyone wants to join us over on the Games with Wings Discord, that is the link that is in the chat now. When you get in there, there will be a channel called Sydney Game Developers Meetup, and within there is a channel called Networking Room. So if you want to pop into the networking room, myself and Tim will both be there, and you'll be able to ask any other questions that you have for Tim directly without me having to translate them in between. Thank you very much, Tim. I really appreciate you taking the time tonight to do this talk for us all. It was very, very good, very interesting. I can see Zoe has just said, thank you very much for the talk. Nice to see you, Zoe. Yep, thank you very much, everyone. And we will see you next month. I don't know what the subject's going to be for next month's talk yet, but keep an eye on our social media on Twitter, Facebook. What else we got? Instagram. We've got it all. You name it, we have it. Yep, keep an eye on those, and do consider subscribing to the channel. You'll also be able to get notifications for upcoming talks that way. And as I say, all our previous talks, as well as some talks from GCAP from, I think it was 2018. We've got an entire playlist of all our GCAP talks as well. John Stevenson has given us a nice smiley face, and Brett Daniels has said, thanks all. Well, thank you, and yep, we'll see you over in the Games with Wings Discord. And Simon Hayes is here as well. Thank you very much, Simon, for attending too. Okay, everyone, we'll see you in the Discord shortly. Thanks.
Thank you.